Hello, everyone. Happy Friday to you all. You have no homework tonight, and enjoy your weekend. All right, Saturday is looking like it's going to be a nice day, so get outside, enjoy the fresh air, and I hope all of your families stay healthy over the weekend as well. If you can please take out your notes on your iPad, we are going to start section 2, A Time of Prosperity, which occurred during Truman's first term, when he took over presidency after FDR in his first full election, first term as president. And that's what we are going to start today. We have 2 slides to cover today, so not too much, not a whole lot. So please pay attention, and hope you enjoy the video. Again, no homework today for this weekend. Enjoy your weekend. And I'm going to scroll to the next slide now. All right, so section 2 is a time of prosperity. So as many American leaders, as we talked about in section 1, were waging the Cold War all around the world, and many important economic, social, and political changes are going to go on here within the United States. Many Americans are going to enjoy this new burst of prosperity in the 40s and the 50s. However, not all of them are necessarily going to share this benefit of the economic boom. Okay, and at home, the Americans faced some important economic challenges after the war. All those defense industries that produced bombs, airplanes, ships, weapons, food, supplies, and other defense needs and technologies for the military had closed or had kind of scaled back on their employment. You have millions of young soldiers that are now back to the United States, and they're looking, all right, to kind of be absorbed into this post-war economy. They're looking for jobs, and as a country, one of the serious challenges we had was how to change back to a peacetime nation and have a peacetime economy that was successful. The last time we did that, we had the Roaring '20s, but then that led to the Great Depression. So a lot of leaders did not want that to help them, did not want that to happen again. So Congress is going to make an effort to prevent some struggles after World War II, and they pass a bill known as the GI Bill. And GI stands for Government Issued. It was the name given to any member of the U.S. Armed Forces. So if you served in the U.S. Armed Forces during World War II, you would receive money. All right, so World War II veterans would receive a portion of money to maybe start a small business or to spend money on other businesses, to go get a higher education, all right, go back to college, go back to high school, some of them, and also, all right, to purchase homes. For example, right here on Long Island, a lot of veterans are going to use the money that they got from Congress to buy homes right in Levittown, in parts of Hicksville, parts of Wantagh, all right, were all Levitt houses built, all right, for these veterans. And very similar to how, like, what's going on now with the coronavirus, we have, over 1 million people that are unemployed throughout the country. The government passed a stimulus bill which gives money to families. Maybe some of your families received money from the government to try and help the economy. So just like during that difficult time, the government put out money to try and, just like now, how the government put money and gave people money to try and help our economy. That's what happens post World War II. And around 2 million soldiers are going to use that money to go get a higher education. All right, being that a lot of soldiers that fought in World War II were so young. Okay, they go back to college and are going to prepare for new careers in kind of civil life. And as that problem is being faced, right, there is inflation that occurs during Truman's time after he took over from FDR. And because of inflation and also Truman, he did support labor. Right, he did shut down a lot of strikes. He threatened to take over mines, threatened to take over railroad industries. A lot of union members and union groups were not happy with Truman's leadership, and the Republicans are actually going to win control of the House and the Senate in 1946, so halfway through Truman's time in office after FDR. The Republicans take back control of Congress, and it's not looking good for Truman. All right, many Americans in 1948 are ready to move on from the Democrats' control of the executive branch and the Democrats' control of Congress. And in 1948, very historic election, Truman, does run for re-election, but his run for re-election is looking very slim. 2 out of 3 voters disapproved of the way he was leading the country, both domestically and internationally. Even Truman's own Democrats were split. Many Democrats were angered by Truman's support of civil rights for African Americans, so white Southern Democrats are actually going to nominate their own candidate for president, South Carolina Governor Strom Thurmond. And liberal Democrats are very unhappy with Truman's policy, so these are like far left Democrats, kind of like Bernie Sanders type Democrats, are going to form their own party called the Progressive Party, which is like the section of Democrats that Bernie Sanders kind of still reaches out to today. And they were unhappy with the way Truman's policy was challenging Soviet expansion. So you have 2 other Democrats running as candidates for presidency, and confident of victory, the Republicans, feel as if the Democrat Party is falling apart, that their nomination of New York's Governor Thomas Dewey, so you should know Thomas Dewey was the governor of New York. Okay, very popular throughout the country. A lot of people thought that Dewey was going to win this election. Okay, make sure you know he's governor of New York. And he kind of takes the election for granted. He was so confident of victory that he really did not campaign very hard. Truman, on the other hand, campaigned tirelessly. He traveled more than 30,000 miles in 1948, made hundreds of speeches, and everywhere Truman went, he attacked what he called the do-nothing Republican Congress. He felt as if the Republican Congress from 1946, 1947 was not doing anything to help the country, and he kind of attacked them. And even with his efforts in campaign, a lot of Americans assumed that Thomas Dewey would still win. And on election night, 1948, in November, the Chicago Tribune prints its first edition with the headline, "Dewey Defeats Truman," when in fact, the Chicago Tribune, this is kind of embarrassing because it indicates that the editors did not get the correct information, and there is some media out there that just prints things to grab people's attention. Truman actually wins the election in 1948. He wins by a very small margin. And this is one of the biggest upsets in American history. Before you had Trump upsetting Hillary Clinton, Truman upsetting Dewey was one of the biggest upsets. And even before Trump, there were some other major upsets. But this is something where Dewey, everyone thought was a lock. It was like when the Giants defeated the undefeated Patriots. That year. I don't know how old you guys were that year, but that was a huge, huge upset. It's one of the biggest upsets in American president election history. Okay, and you need to know that. So the election of 1948 is a great success for Truman. All right, his efforts in campaigning paid off. All right, and he reached out to enough Democrats and maybe even some Republicans throughout the country to get their votes. And President Truman saw his narrow victory as a chance to act on his Fair Deal program, which we'll talk about, and which he proposed during his campaign. He's going to propose a number of programs, for example, to increase the minimum wage, right, to provide funds for flood control and for some low-income housing. And he does try to reduce racial discrimination throughout the country, but Congress voted down all of those proposals by Truman. I'll leave this slide up for another second or two, and we'll move on to the next slide. So in 1952, Truman decides to not run again. He could have run for president again for a second term, because technically he took over FDR's third term, and he could have ran for a second term. And the Democrats are going to nominate Adlai Stevenson, a governor from Illinois. He is the candidate for the Democrats in 1952. And the Republicans choose General Dwight D. Eisenhower to serve as their candidate. All right, and an interesting fact about Dwight Eisenhower. All right, he was nicknamed Ike. Okay, that was his nickname. He was a war hero, and he's going to campaign on the fact that he was a war hero and he helped win the war, specifically the effort in Europe. And he's going to win by a landslide. All right, absolutely takes total control of this election from Adlai Stevenson. And in contrast to Roosevelt and Truman, Eisenhower believed that the federal government should play a much smaller role in the economy, and he's going to call for some cutting on spending, though not for any programs that helped people. In fact, he increased the number of people who could receive Social Security benefits, but he believed in decreasing the effort that the government takes within the economy. And he's very fair throughout his presidency. During his presidency, he followed a middle-of-the-road policy in his 2 terms as president, and he has a running on a record of peace, progress, and prosperity, which helps him win another victory in 1956, right, that helped him win the election. And he was Republican, but he was also very moderate in his policies that gained a lot of support from Democrats. And Eisenhower's greatest achievement was the Interstate Highway Act of 1956. Right, it is his greatest policy, and under this act, it provided money for a vast system of freeways to link all parts of the United States, much like how Interstate 95 links pretty much all of the states along the eastern coast. Interstate 80, all right, links all of the states from the east to the west. And this highway system is going to help trade. It's going to force people to not just rely on railroads for traveling and transporting goods. People are going to now use cars and trucks to transport goods, which is going to help unite our economy domestically. All right, so that was his biggest achievement in terms of policy, the Interstate Highway Act of 1956, and we still see how important that is in our society today. I'll leave this slide up for a couple more seconds. This is the last slide for today, so like I said, only 2 slides for today. Now what I would like to do Monday is I would like to Kahoot with you guys. I'm going to ask if you have your phone with you. I'll explain how you're going to use your phone to Kahoot. I think it just might be easier to use your phone, especially if you watch the conference on your iPad. You can Kahoot using your iPad. I'll explain how you can do that on Monday as well. I hope all of you have a great weekend, and all your families stay healthy and well. And I wish you a happy Friday. Thank you for watching the video. Again, no homework. Just make sure you submit any assignment that was due this week by 3 p.m. today. Thank you. Slide, you can see some new achievements here that occur in the in the 1950s, and we'll talk more about some of the images you see here when we conference again on